Welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you're writing code or working in today's digital world, you already know the uncomfortable truth. Cyber threats are literally lurking around every single corner of the internet. It's a reality we all have to face every day. Today, we're diving into some fantastic insights shared by developer Youssef DM in a recent piece about application security. He highlights a simple yet unbelievably powerful lesson about securing web apps. We're going to talk about the absolute first line of defense we have against these looming threats: input validation.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with the invisible cyber threat, move on to defining input validation, look at the SQL wake-up call, cover 4 essential best practices, and wrap up with prevention over cure. Let's dive in.
Section 1. The invisible cyber threat. So there's this common and honestly kind of embarrassing misconception we have when it comes to securing web applications. Youssef shares a brutally honest admission here. He says, "I didn't fully appreciate how important it is to validate user input. It felt like one of those tedious tasks you just sprinkle in at the end." I mean, a lot of us can relate to this, right? When you're building an app, you're totally focused on functionality. You just want the thing to work. Security, especially validating what a user types into a box, can feel like a chore, like a pinch of salt you just sprinkle on right before you serve the meal. But over time, and usually after seeing how drastically things can go wrong, developers realize this isn't an afterthought. It's the entire foundation.
All right, Section 2, defining input validation.
So if validation isn't just some tedious task to sprinkle in at the end, what exactly is it? Well, input validation is all about carefully inspecting and sanitizing the data your users provide well before your application ever processes or stores it. Think of it like a massive, strict bouncer at the front door of your app. Whether it's a basic login form, a search box, or a complex API endpoint, you have to remember that without proper validation, you are basically leaving the front door wide open for attackers. By putting validation in place, you're making sure that only properly formatted, expected, and most importantly, safe data actually gets inside.
Now, doing this from scratch can definitely feel daunting, but you don't have to guess. Youssef highly recommends leaning on established resources, specifically the OWASP Input Validation Checklist. This is a remarkably reliable cheat sheet developers can use to ensure they aren't missing any critical steps. It covers all the key areas, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel when you're trying to keep malicious inputs from slipping through the cracks.
Moving on to Section 3, the SQL Injection Wake-up Call.
Okay, this is where things get super real. What actually happens when you skip that tedious task? What's incredibly interesting here is seeing an attack laid out in plain text. Youssef notes that the first time he truly grasped the danger of SQL injection, it felt like a punch to his applications. Let's look at this classic example of a basic login form checking a database. An attacker doesn't put in a normal username. No, instead, they inject a malicious SQL statement right into the input field. They type admin or 1 = 1 followed by 2 dashes. Your application, lacking input validation, just takes that raw text and drops it straight into the database query.
So, the million-dollar question: how exactly does this weird string of text bypass the entire login system? Well, it's a huge aha moment when you realize how SQL reads this. See, the condition or 1 = 1 is a mathematical absolute. It always evaluates to true. And those 2 dashes at the end? In SQL, that literally comments out the rest of the query, including the password check. No way, right? But because 1 = 1 is true, the database returns a successful match, granting the attacker totally unauthorized access, often with full admin privileges. That one tiny crack in validation completely compromised the entire database.
Which brings us to Section 4, 4 essential best practices.
Thankfully, we are not defenseless here. There are proven ways to build strong armor against SQL injections and other input-related attacks. Youssef lays out 4 concrete best practices to strengthen your web applications. Think of these as sequential layers of defense. They are whitelisting, leveraging framework protections, keeping up with dependency updates, and implementing a web application firewall, or WAF. Let's break these down.
The absolute foundational rule of validation comes down to whitelisting versus blacklisting. Blacklisting is trying to maintain a list of every possible bad character or script and blocking it. Honestly, it's a losing game because attackers are infinitely creative. Whitelisting, on the other hand, is defining strict validation rules based on exactly what you expect. You only allow known, safe characters. If a field expects a phone number, you only allow digits, no letters, no symbols, definitely no SQL commands. It massively reduces the risk of harmful data slipping through.
Let's look at how this builds with the remaining 3 practices. First, automatic escaping. Most modern web frameworks offer built-in input validation libraries and escaping mechanisms. Just use them. They save you development time and prevent common manual errors. Next, security patches. This means keeping your libraries and dependencies totally up to date, because outdated software is basically a playground for known vulnerabilities. Finally, detecting malicious traffic by implementing a web application firewall. Now, a WAF doesn't replace your code-level input validation, but it acts as a killer extra layer, detecting and blocking malicious traffic before it even reaches your app's logic.
And finally, Section 5, Prevention over Cure. Looking back at his own journey in cybersecurity, Yusuf offers a piece of parting advice for all of us. He says, "Don't wait for a security incident to highlight the gaps in your defenses. Prevention is always better than a cure." It's a bold, essential takeaway. Proactive application security is not a luxury, it is absolutely non-negotiable. Putting the effort in today to validate your inputs is infinitely better than trying to clean up a devastating data breach tomorrow. For sure.
Which leaves us with this final thought for you to consider as we wrap up this explainer. Take a hard look at the code you're working on today. What gaps exist in your own application's defenses right now? Are there input fields where you just sprinkled validation on as an afterthought, or is your front door actually locked tight? Don't wait. Take the time to implement these safeguards today. Thanks so much for joining me to explore this crucial security baseline. And hey, happy and secure coding.